There is a pattern that has destroyed three global superpowers in the last 500 years, and today, in 2025, the United States is following that pattern step by step, decision by decision, almost as if reading the same sequence of events that led to disaster every single time before. In 1590, Spain was the wealthiest empire in the world. It controlled half of the world's gold and silver. Its army dominated every corner of Europe. Its currency was accepted everywhere. Within 80 years, they went bankrupt. They fell into the ranks of a second-rate power that never recovered. In 1914, Britain ruled the largest empire in human history. It possessed territories on which the sun never set. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Within 40 years, the empire was shattered. The currency collapsed. They became America's junior partner. In 1991, the Soviet Union was the other superpower. Nuclear weapons, global influence, satellites spanning the world. Within 900 days, it was all gone. Not through war, but through economic implosion. 3 times. 3 superpowers. 3 total collapses. All followed the same sequence. What is truly unsettling is this. The United States has already completed 5 of the 7 stages. We are not even near the pattern. We are inside the trajectory. This is the story of how empires end, why they always believed they were different from the others, and why mathematics suggests that it is now our turn. And everything is changing faster than anyone wants to admit. Before moving into the pattern, you need to understand what imperial collapse actually looks like. Not as described in textbooks, but in real life. What does it really mean when a superpower dies? Collapse does not begin with invasion or military defeat. It begins with economic exhaustion. The empire stretches itself beyond the capacity it can sustain. Military bases in 150 states, wars on multiple fronts, promises that cannot be kept, and of course debts that cannot be repaid. At first, the decline is not noticeable. The currency still functions, the army still wins wars, the government still makes promises. But beneath the ground, the foundation is cracking, resources are misallocated, productivity declines, the most intelligent and talented leave the country. Then it accelerates. Allies become cautious, enemies test boundaries, trade partners search for alternatives, reserve currency status erodes, and suddenly the advantages that once created your power turn into vulnerabilities. The currency that everyone once demanded begins to flow back home. Your globally dispersed military becomes unsustainable. The promises once guaranteed by strength turn into empty words. This is not a conspiracy theory. It happened in Spain, it happened in Britain, it occurred in the Soviet Union, because they all walked the same path we are walking today. They believed their power would last forever. They overexpanded militarily. They debased their currencies. And even when collapse had already begun, they ignored reality. Now let's look at how this happened 3 times in exactly the same way. Let's begin with the first global empire, Spain, the 1500s and 1600s. The original blueprint. After Columbus discovered America in 1492, Spain became the first true world power. They conquered the Aztec and Inca empires. They seized the richest gold and silver sources history had ever witnessed. By 1550, Spanish galleons were bringing home 200 tons of silver every year. By 1600, that number exceeded 400 tons annually. Spain shaped Europe's money supply. The Spanish real was the global reserve currency. Everyone wanted Spanish silver. And the pattern begins exactly here. A country that controls the world's money and believes that this makes it invincible. Philip II ruled from 1556 to 1598. He possessed more wealth than any ruler in history and spent it on the empire. Stage 1. Military overextension. Spain fought everywhere at once. Against the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, against France and Italy, against Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, against the English Navy in the Philippines, in the Americas. By 1580, they had military commitments on 4 continents. Half of the revenue was sent to the army. And still, it was not enough. Stage 2. Currency debasement. When tax revenues proved insufficient, they did what every collapsing empire does. They began mixing copper into their silver coins. What was supposed to be pure silver became first 50% copper, then 75% copper. The face value remained the same, but the real value fell. By 1600, there was almost no silver left in the coins. Merchants stopped accepting them at full value. Inflation was rampant. Stage 3, the debt trap. Spain constantly borrowed. From Italian bankers, from German bankers, from anyone willing to lend. In 1557, just 20 years into Philip's reign, they declared bankruptcy. They restructured their debts, then borrowed. Again and again. Bankruptcy in 1560. Again in 1575. Again in 1596. 4 bankruptcies in 40 years. Each time they promised reforms. Each time they sank back into the debt swamp. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. What many fail to grasp is this. Spain's gold and silver destroyed them. If you have unlimited money, you stop producing. Why farm when you can import? Why build ships when you can buy them? Why reform when you can spend? The nobility looked down on work. Industry declined. Agriculture stagnated. The wealth flowing from the Americas was spent on French wine, Italian silk, Dutch goods. Spain became a transit point. Money flowed through, but it did not stay. When silver production declined, the system collapsed. Stage 5. Social decay. As the economy failed, crime increased. The streets of Madrid filled with beggars. Productive people emigrated. The best minds went to France, England, the Netherlands. What remained were bureaucrats, soldiers, and clergy. There was no production, only consumption. In 1640, they lost Portugal. In 1650, the Netherlands, their most productive territory. By 1700, the empire was large in name, but economically lifeless. In less than a century, they fell from superpower to secondary power and never recovered. Fast forward 300 years. Britain, the empire on which the sun never set. At its peak, it controlled 25% of the Earth's surface and 400 million people. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. London was the world's financial center. And they believed it would last forever. Stage 1. Military overexpansion. India, China, the Middle East, Africa, the Pacific, the Caribbean. Dominance across 6 continents. Then in 1914, World War I began. They could have remained neutral and watched Europe destroy itself, or they could enter the war and push the empire into debt. They chose war. It cost over $40 billion. Most of the borrowing came from America. The creditor became the debtor. Stage 2. Currency crisis. Gold reserves were nearly depleted. In 1925, they returned to the gold standard at the pre-war rate, but the pound was severely overvalued. Exports became expensive. Unemployment rose. In 1931, they abandoned the gold standard. The pound lost 25% of its value in a single night. Stage 3. Debt burden. World War II brought another massive debt. By 1945, debts to the United States and Canada exceeded the country's GDP. They won the war, but lost the empire. In 1947, India was gone. Over the next 20 years, Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. By 1970, the empire existed only in history books. The pound evolved from a global reserve currency into a regional one. The final example, the Soviet Union. After 1945, it emerged as a superpower, nuclear weapons, dominance over Eastern Europe, presence in the space race. But the economic foundations were rotting. Stage 1, military burden. 15 to 20% of GDP went to the military. They had to compete with America, Afghanistan, Cuba, Syria, Vietnam. It was unsustainable. Stage 2, economic stagnation. Growth stopped in the 1970s. Oil revenues kept the system afloat, but production collapsed. By the 1980s, they were importing grain. Stage 3, currency collapse. The ruble was not a true global currency. No one wanted it. When oil prices fell, gold reserves eroded. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Eastern Europe was lost. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved. In 900 days, they went from superpower to non-existence. The pattern played out again. Overextension, currency crisis, debt, loss of empire, collapse. Now let's come to the main issue. America is following the same path. More than 750 military bases, 80 countries, troops in 150 countries, NATO, the Pacific, the Middle East, an $850 billion defense budget. Still not enough. In 1971, Nixon closed the gold window. The dollar became a fully fiat currency. Since 2000, the money supply has increased by 400%. Since 2020, more than $6 trillion has been printed. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. $36 trillion in debt. 120% of GDP interest payments exceed defense spending. Deficits continue year after year. Productive capacity has weakened. Dependence on imports has increased. Supply chains are abroad. Institutional trust is at record lows. Crime is rising. Homelessness is increasing. Drug overdoses nearly exceed 100,000 deaths per year. Fertility is declining. The political system is gridlocked. We're in Stage 5. Stage 6 is the loss of reserve currency status. Central banks are buying gold. BRICS nations are developing alternatives. China and Russia trade in their own currencies. The cracks are deepening. Stage 7 is collapse. Not slow, but sudden. Every empire believed it was exceptional. Everyone was wrong. The pattern does not care about exceptions. Mathematics is not emotional. You cannot spend more than you earn forever. You cannot sustain an empire without production. You cannot debase your currency and expect no consequences. Maybe there are 10 years, maybe 5, maybe less. But the pattern signals that collapse is coming. Maybe this time history will take a different course. Maybe reform will come. Maybe recovery is possible. But history shows that empires disappear the same way. The answers are not hidden in the future. They are recorded in the past. And if you know where to look, you can already see what the end looks like. History is nothing more than repeating cycles. If this video opened a new door for you to think, you may subscribe to the channel.